It was another quiet morning at Rosewood Rehabilitation Center in California. Emily Carter, a 27-year-old nurse, adjusted her white uniform and took a deep breath before starting her rounds. She was known for her calm voice, gentle hands, and shy nature. What no one knew, however, was that Emily could communicate in sign language, a skill she'd learned after losing her younger brother, who had been born deaf. That morning, a new patient arrived, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, an elegant woman in her late 60s. Everyone in the hospital knew she was the mother of Ethan Hayes, one of the most powerful young CEOs in Los Angeles. The woman had recently suffered a mild stroke and had partial hearing loss. Nurses whispered nervously, hoping not to offend the family of such a high-profile figure. When Emily entered the room, Mrs. Hayes sat silently near the window, looking lost and frustrated as the other staff failed to understand her hand movements. Emily watched for a moment, then quietly walked over, knelt beside her and gently signed, "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes. My name is Emily. I'll be your nurse today." The old woman's eyes widened. A smile slowly spread across her face, the first one that day. Tears glimmered as she replied in sign, "You understand me?" Emily nodded softly. "Yes, I do." The two women began to communicate effortlessly, their hands flowing gracefully through the air. Emily listened with her eyes and heart, asking about Eleanor's favorite foods, her comfort, and her mood. For the first time since her arrival, Mrs. Hayes felt seen, not pitied. But what Emily didn't know was that someone was watching, Ethan Hayes himself. Ethan had arrived unannounced, dressed sharply in a dark navy suit, his jaw tight with worry. He stood outside the half-open door, expecting to see a nervous nurse fumbling around. Instead, he saw a young woman with warm eyes and steady hands, speaking fluently through gestures that his mother responded to with laughter. For a moment, Ethan forgot his usual guardedness. His powerful mind, trained for deals and deadlines, softened as he watched this nurse comfort his mother with such sincerity. When he finally entered, Emily didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on helping Mrs. Hayes finish her tea. Eleanor turned to her son, signing something quickly. Emily translated aloud with a small smile. "She says you're late again." Ethan blinked, then smiled, genuinely. "That sounds like her," he replied, amused. Emily looked up, finally realizing who he was. "Oh, Mr. Hayes, I didn't know you were here," she stammered, her cheeks pink. "It's fine," he said gently. "You've done more for my mother in 10 minutes than others have in days." Over the next few weeks, Ethan visited more often. At first, it was to check on his mother, or at least that's what he told himself. But gradually, he found himself drawn to the quiet nurse who spoke with her hands and her heart. He watched how Emily listened patiently, how she smiled without trying to impress anyone, how she treated every patient, rich or poor, with the same kindness. One afternoon, as the California sun poured through the window, Ethan brought his mother flowers. She smiled knowingly and signed something teasingly toward him. Emily translated again, trying not to blush. "She says you should bring flowers for me next time," Ethan chuckled. "I think I will." Emily's heart skipped. "Please don't." "Too late," he interrupted softly, eyes locked on hers. But the story wasn't just about romance. There was a turning point. One night when Mrs. Hayes suddenly collapsed, her heart monitor flatlining for a terrifying moment. Emily rushed in, performing CPR until the emergency team arrived. Ethan got there moments later, breathless and panicked. "She's stable," Emily whispered after the chaos settled, her hands trembling. "We didn't lose her." Ethan, usually composed, couldn't speak. He simply looked at Emily, gratitude and relief overwhelming him. "You saved my mother," he said hoarsely. "She's strong," Emily replied, brushing away a tear. "She just needed someone to listen." He took her hand, his voice barely above a whisper. "So did I." A week later, Mrs. Hayes recovered enough to go home. She hugged Emily tightly and signed something that made both of them emotional. Emily smiled and translated softly, "She says she hopes I'll visit often." As family, Ethan stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You will, won't you?" Emily hesitated. "If I'm allowed to." "You're not just allowed," he said quietly. "You're invited." The next weekend, she visited their mansion for dinner. It wasn't glamorous, just a small meal in the garden. Laughter echoing as Mrs. Hayes signed jokes and Ethan translated terribly on purpose, making them both laugh harder. And when the night ended, Ethan walked her to her car. "You know," he said, his tone lighter, "I used to think business was about power and strategy. But you taught me it's about connection." Emily looked up, smiling shyly. "I just listened." He leaned closer. "And I just fell." The stars shimmered above them, quiet witnesses to a story that began not with grand gestures, but with the simple language of kindness.